Well, this is such a treat. Welcome to the 700 Club, Dan Macaulay. Wow. You know, I really appreciate the vibe that you have and really what takes place inside of you. And, you know, I always wonder, where did that begin? What was the formation growing up, and how did God put that in you?
So I grew up in church pretty much my whole life, just in Brantford, Ontario.
Yes.
And so I started leading worship in my youth group when I was about 15 or 16.
Wow.
It was pretty rough at first when I was first started off. But I don't know, whenever people actually ask me, how did you get started in music, or how did you get where you are, and what should I do? I always tell them, just be faithful in the little things, just grow where you're planted. And I guess that's kind of what I did. I was just there and just serving, and so serving in my youth group became serving, be invited to lead worship in big church with the adults, to take a chance on the young guy, maybe Sunday night first. And then it became being invited to go out and do a youth rally or go do a youth retreat, became youth convention, became whatever, until now we're 25 years plus, and I guess I never stopped.
Wow.
But that's kind of where it all started for me, is just serving in church.
You know, it's interesting because so many times we look at youth and we don't recognize that they're going to be the leaders in the next generation, right? But when I see what you're doing now, and some of the places that you're impacting and just stirring, what is your primary passion? I mean, you get an opportunity to talk to a lot of congregations, but what are you doing right now, currently?
Probably my primary passion is what I'm doing the most currently, which is going out and kind of mentoring or working with worship teams. So I'll come in on a Saturday a lot of times and do a workshop with a church worship team and kind of talk about some of the practical things that go into leading worship, but really the heart things that are really important. Actually, I often tell people leading worship's hard, and not making music. If you have some kind of musical gifting, and if you're inclined that way, then that comes naturally to you in some way. That's not really what I'm talking about, the hard part. The hard part is wrangling this guy right here. Wrangling the heart, making sure our motives are right and why we're doing what we're doing. And so we talk about some of those things, and as well as the mechanics of how to make music and make it work well, because the practical goes in to support the spiritual so we can get where we are. So I'll do that on a Saturday, stay over, lead worship with their team, and often even preach on worship to the congregation and talk about what worship is and how can we motivate our hearts towards worship when we're struggling, when we come on a Sunday morning or on a day and we realize, I don't really feel like doing this today. I'm not really into it. How can we nudge our hearts into worship to respond to him more like he is worthy of?
Well, you know, Dan, it's interesting because you have a very creative house, and Danielle, yourself, she's a blogger, but also author, and your boys you got an active family. But you also just have a passion to teach and then to bring people into a place of just encountering God. But it seems like it's an oxymoron today, because we have more access to multimedia and everything, so people can see places like Australia, the US, and everything. But we know a lot, but we don't necessarily have a lot. How do you break that down?
Well, I mean, we do. We see it everywhere, but it's a different thing to watch other people worship on YouTube and watch the clip of it. Then it's a different thing to actually go there yourself and actually do it yourself. And I talk about with worship leaders when we talk in our session that it can't. Leading worship, in order to lead worship, we need to be worshipers. So we need to spend time in our downtime, our own time with the Lord, and getting to know how to worship and how to hear his voice and hear from him and lift our praise. So I tell them it needs to be a well-worn path in our lives that we do day in and day out, because leading worship is kind of like it's an act of multitasking. You're worshiping God yourself for real. Honestly, it's better when you are, anyways, as opposed to just pretending. And you're monitoring what's going on here, and so there's a multitasking aspect to that, and being able to actually bridge the gap from just singing songs, just going through the motions, recreating a YouTube video, recreating and recording the way we've heard it. It's about that groundwork that we lay in our lives day in and day out. When that's there, it comes out in that environment, and we're able to lead people there in that environment. And really, we're not able to lead people somewhere publicly where we've not gone privately. So we have to lay that groundwork.
Ouch, ouch. I think there's a lot of people out there that are listening right now because we go to church, but we don't necessarily get the most out of worship, because you can teach what you know and you can cram for an exam, but you can only give what you got. And you're basically saying if you don't really have that relationship yourself, it's hard to pass that on to someone else. If someone's watching right now, they're a brand new Christian and they just want to learn how to worship, I think sometimes we can go into church and we feel like a worship leader is a worship bully. Lift up your hands right now. Make sure that you sing on this chord. And then you said something about karaoke earlier. What were you saying?
I said a friend of mine, they had someone come to church who had never been before, and they said, "Oh, how'd you enjoy church?" "Oh, yeah, I liked it. I really liked the karaoke."
Yeah.
So, I mean, but if you think about it, you're seeing your words on screen and people are singing. Oh, it's like karaoke. That's the first thing that they have to. But it's supposed to be more than that. It's got to come. It's got to come from here. A new believer, obviously, or someone visiting the church isn't going to be in that place yet.
Right.
But for all of us, that's what it's supposed to be.
But how do you get someone right now? They're saying, I need to come into a worship with God. What's the thing? Would you give them some practical tips?
I think it's gotta flow out of something that's going on in your life. Worship is supposed to be the singing that we do, all that's not worship as a whole. That's supposed to be the overflow of our worship. It's supposed to be the outflow of our worship. It's supposed to be a part of our worship. That's gonna happen naturally when we get our heart in the right place.
Yeah.
When we simple things like counting our blessings. It starts to nudge our heart in the right direction. Remembering all that God has forgiven us of. Because like that woman who came and dumped out the perfume on Jesus, and they're all judging her, and Jesus said, she's worshiping me like this because she realized was what she's been forgiven of.
Right.
All these kinds of things begin to nudge our heart in the right direction. And they bump us out of the thing of just going through the motions or just singing songs to a place where it's coming from here. Yeah.
Tell us about your latest project. What are you up to?
Well, I'm just writing right now. I'm in a season of writing, and hopefully maybe putting out some new things in 2019. So yeah, excited for those.
And you're working with a Better Us as well? Then?
Yes, love Ron and Ann in that show. I love being a part of that show, and Pinball.
Yeah. You and your wife work so closely together. I know this is a loaded question. How do you make it work when you guys are working together, but also you're ministering together?
Well, sometimes that means just going and working in a different room. Because if she wants to talk to me, and I have trouble breaking out of my box to focus on what I'm doing. So sometimes I'll just I'm gonna go work downstairs just so I can focus.
I'm gonna work this. I'm gonna worship.
Yeah.
Well, Dan Macaulay, you're gonna be singing some originals here, and I just really appreciate your heart and your vibe. Could you pray for someone? Because I believe it's more caught than taught, but it has to be taught before it's caught. But somebody right there just saying, I just want to worship. I want to be a worshiper. Would you pray with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Lord, I just pray for the person right now who has a desire to worship. Maybe it feels like they're standing on the outside and looking at people who seem to have something more than they do, who seem to know something they don't know. God, I pray that you would draw them in, and God, you would give us a desire. You would give them a desire to chase after you, to pursue you, because our worship is our response to you, and we can't respond to you correctly unless we really know who you are. Amen. So God, I pray you would reveal yourself to them, and you would give us that pull and that growth, God. We know even more than we want it, you want that relationship with them and with us. And so God, I just pray for an increase there, that where that desire is, you'd meet them right there, and that you would bless them.
In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Dan Macaulay. We're going to hear more. I was going to put you on the spot and ask you to start to worship with us, but you'll hear him a little bit later. Up next, an addict hits rock bottom, only to find God waiting for him there. Thank you again, buddy.
Thank you.